Today it's Wednesday once again, 7 p.m., and we are going to start the introduction to the Gospel of Matthew. What are we going to learn today? Well, we'll look at the Gospel of Matthew and answer the following questions. The early church fathers chose 4 Gospels. Why? I already told you this in our earlier Bible study class as to why they chose 4 Gospels. And out of the 4, 3 are synoptic Gospels. You know, synoptic means they can be seen together or they are similar. And if they are similar, then why 3 were chosen in this 4? And how do we know that these 3 synoptic Gospels are similar? We need proof. No? Just because I tell you something, it doesn't mean, oh, Sam is conducting the Bible class, so he must be right. No. We need to prove it. And which of the 3 was written first? We have to find out. There's a reason for that. I'll come to that. Who wrote the Gospel of Matthew? You might say Matthew, but let us find proof. Who was Matthew? How does Matthew's Gospel differ from Mark's? And how does Matthew's Gospel differ from Luke's? If they're all synoptics. We'll also look at the main characteristics of Matthew's Gospel. Before we start, we must look at the 4 Gospels and their authors, for they were so different from each other. They were all written at different times. And we must also look on the symbols of the 4 evangelists. The 4 Gospel writers are called the evangelists. So we must look at the symbols that were assigned by popular, tradition. You know, each of the Gospels has an icon. Yeah? And they were derived from the 4 living creatures in the book of Ezekiel. That is Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 10. They 4 have the face of a man, he says, and the face of a lion on the right side. And they 4 had the face of an ox on the right side. They 4 also had the face of an eagle. That's from Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 10. The icons, many people in the early church fathers, they were selecting these 4 icons and ascribing it to and putting it for any of the Gospels. But Jerome's assignment of the symbols to the Gospels was the most popular. And his rationale was that the icons that we are giving to each of the Gospels depends on how each Gospel narrative begins. For example, Matthew is the man, the symbol for Matthew is man, as you can see. Because Matthew begins with the genealogy of man, of Jesus. Mark is the lion because Mark's Gospel starts with the roaring in the desert with prophetic power. That's John the Baptist. Luke is the ox. You know why? Because he begins with a temple sacrifice. When Jesus was taken to the temple, you remember? John is the eagle. Because he's flying heavenwards like the divine word. Because John starts with, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God. And the Word was God. That's how the icons were assigned. I would like you to know. You should know this. Yeah? If you're doing Bible study, these are small things that we ought to know. Or these are mementos that are sold, that depict the Gospel writer with this icon that they've got. Yeah? So, let's try to answer all these questions that have come up, that we raised in the beginning. The early church fathers chose 4 Gospels. Why? I already have told you that. Because you need more than one witness. Yeah? And you got 4 for the 4 ends of the earth. The second question is, but they are all 3 of them are synoptics. Why then 3 synoptics if they're all similar? I want to tell you something. If there's an incident that happens and we read the headlines, okay? We read the headline. The moment we read the headline and if it looks very controversial, what do? We then look for the author's name. If it's a communal riot, then we see the person who's writing, the author. whether he's a Hindu, he's a Muslim, or a Christian. Why? Because then we can read it in that context. Because you go into the mind of the author and you see, this is what he's trying to tell. Okay? If it's a political commentary or something, then you look again for the author and see if he's a Congress sympathizer or a BJP sympathizer or any other political sympathizer. Why? Because then we can see it reference to context as to what he's saying and what is his objective, why he is saying what he is saying. Similarly, my video, Jesus is God. The person seeing that video on YouTube, the icon and the title, will first see, who has written this? If he's a non-believer or he's an atheist or a Christian, then you will watch it and you will watch it in context. That is what exactly I want to tell you. So Matthew, Mark and Luke were all different type of people with different mindsets. Among them, Mark was the young lad, who was a disciple of Peter later on. It is said that the Last Supper took place in his house in the upper room, his mother being a wealthy lady. Matthew was an apostle. He was with Jesus all the time. And Luke, forget being an apostle, forget being a disciple of Peter. He was not even a Jew, he was a Gentile. So wow, we've got similar Gospels, the Synoptics, written by 3 different people. Yeah? So their perspectives will be different. Add to that, the people to whom they were writing were also different. The same way, like when writing to, the writer will think of his target audience and he will write. He will write things that are agreeable to his audience. So we'll have to see these 3 Gospels for whom they were written. I can give you examples. Arnab Goswami, the acerbic, very loud-mouthed news anchor. When he interviews anybody, he is very aggressive. But you watch his interview with Raj Thakre. He's as passive as a mouse. So it depends who is your target audience, whom you are talking to. I was in college and in St. Xavier's Technical Institute at Mahim, and we had Professor Kinney, a great guy. I think he would have been a great orator. He was a great teacher. And he used to tell us, when we are appearing for our exams, one-to-one with the examiner, he used to tell us, presentation, my boys, presentation. And then he would go on to tell us, suppose you are in charge of some work and you see a big guy, 6.5 feet tall, heavily built, terrific built, and he does a stupid mistake. And if you go and say, you idiot, what have you done? That guy will whack your nose. He used to say, and if you go to him and you say, what have you done? You can really be an idiot. Why did you do this? He won't punch you in the nose. He will listen to you. That's how it is presented. The presentation also depends on your target audience, whom you are talking to. Okay? So if we know who is writing and for whom, we will better understand the context and know what the gospel writer intends to say to the reader. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. I think slowly you're going to understand why we have 3 synoptics. Even though they are similar, they are different. Okay, now, how do we know that the 3 synoptics are similar? This is another thing that we have to tackle now. If you say they are similar, I also already told you reasons why they might not be similar. But now, how do we know that they are called synoptics? And how do we know that the 3 synoptics are similar? We can arrange them in columns and compare, if you take all the verses. We will see the similarities in the wording. For example, in feeding of the 5,000. In Matthew, that is chapter 14, verses 12 to 21. And in Mark, chapter 6, verses 30 to 44. And Luke, chapter 9, verses 10 to 17. The wording also is absolutely similar. They are common, those verses. Also the healing of the man with palsy, similar. You know, they're so similar, there are common verses. But now we come to the next part, is which of these three gospels was written first? Let's see. You know, because all of them are not equally long. So if they were all equally long and the same, then they would have copied it from one particular source, the same source. But they are not the same length, as I told you. Mark has 661 verses, Matthew has 1068, and Luke has 1149. So if they are similar, they must have common verses. So let's see how many common verses they have. Out of Mark's 661 verses, Matthew copies 606 verses. He leaves out only 55. And out of that 55 that he does not copy, Luke copies 31. So that leaves out only 24 verses that were omitted by both Matthew and Luke. They did not copy this. There were reasons why they did not copy these 24 verses. I will tell you later. But both Matthew and Luke follow Mark's order of events. Occasionally, maybe Matthew or Luke might differ in the sequence, but never both of them together. This proves that Mark was the first gospel to be ever written. Okay? Now, Mark was short. The Gospel of Mark is very short, and it's just a summary. Both Matthew and Luke try to improve and polish what Mark wrote. How do we know? I'll show you. You know, you have to know all these things, because then you will understand when we go through the journey of the book of Matthew, you will understand the book better. Yeah. See, Mark is very brusque, to the point, ruthless, with no compulsions. He has no compulsions. So he presents us a very human Jesus. But Matthew and Luke reiterate there is no limitation to Jesus' power. Let's compare and see. I will compare the verses, side by side. Mark chapter 3 verse 10, he says, for he healed many who were sick. But Matthew in chapter 8 verse 16 writes, and he healed all who were sick. Not many, all, without exception. And Luke also says that again. Luke in chapter 4 verse 40 says, and he healed them all. So Mark says many, but Luke and Matthew say no, not many, all, without exception. About Jesus' visit to Nazareth, see what happens. See how Mark is writing and see how Matthew is writing. In Mark chapter 6 verse 5 to 6, Mark writes, he could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. But see how Matthew is writing the same thing. And he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith. Shrinks from saying he could not do. He says he did not do. He shrinks from saying that Jesus' powers were limited. No. Okay? Now, remember those 24 verses from Mark that both Matthew and Luke omitted? Sometimes both leave out little touches in Mark's verses that could be taken to belittle Jesus. They just omit those verses. They just omit them. The other 24 verses. Among them, I'll tell you some. Look at Mark chapter 3 verse 5. When he was, the Pharisees were questioning him for healing on the Sabbath. Mark writes in chapter 3 verse 5. He looked around at them in anger. Then in the same chapter, Mark 3, chapter 3 verse 21. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him. For they said, he is out of his mind. See how Mark is writing. And then Mark also writes in, when the apostles are preventing the little children from coming to him, are keeping them off. What Mark writes in chapter 10 verse 14 is, when Jesus saw this, he was indignant. That means he was angry for a good reason. When Jesus saw this, he was indignant. So, Matthew and Luke hesitate to attribute human emotions to Jesus, and they do not like Jesus being called mad or out of his mind. As I'm reading out to you from the verses, You can pause the YouTube video and refer to your Bibles to see what I am saying, when I am reading out the verses, they are right or not. Yeah? Because in a Bible class, they would all be having their Bibles and they would have been referring. I would have told them to refer. Here, because we are not having we are not having a face-to-face class, I'm asking you, if you want to confirm the readings, you can pause the readings, pause the YouTube video and look into your Bibles. Yeah? Now you know why the three synoptic gospels were chosen. They were not that similar after all. And all this makes it clear that Mark is the earliest gospel. When you read Mark, he seems to be in a tearing hurry. The words immediately, soon after, and all that comes so many times. But Mark's gospel is a vivid and direct narrative. You know, he had no compulsions at that time. The church had not been solidly formed. But Matthew and Luke, because they were written later, have already begun, if you can see it, they have already begun to be affected by doctrinal and theological considerations. So they had to make sure that they were politically or theologically or doctrinally correct. Matthew and Luke also avoid painting the apostles in bad light. They will not write, but Mark doesn't care. See, when James and John went to Jesus, that thing sitting on the right hand of the Son of God and sitting on the left hand side. Mark writes like this in chapter 10 verse 35. He writes that James and John want to sit on the right and left of Jesus' throne. But see how Matthew writes it in chapter 20 verse 20. Matthew writes that their mother came to request. Yeah? Their mother came to make this request to Jesus. So Matthew, being an apostle himself, doesn't ascribe it directly. But Mark, who must have heard from Peter, he puts it directly onto the apostles. Mark's gospel also tells us, let's look at Mark. When you read Mark, nearly all the time, throughout the gospel, Mark tells us what Jesus did. It's like aankho dekha hal, a commentary, a running commentary. And if there is anything about what Jesus said, it was merely conversational, relative to the event or the event that was happening. But Matthew's gospel not only tells us what Jesus did because he's copied from Mark, but he also tells us what Jesus said, all his teachings. And Luke's gospel not only tells us about Mark and Matthew, but he tells us more about parables, which are, some of his parables are not there in any of the gospels. The prodigal son, one of the greatest parables. Many of these wonderful parables are not there in the other gospels. So we come to the conclusion that Matthew's gospel is actually a teaching gospel. Yeah? I hope you are with me so far. Now let us look at the three gospels together, the synoptics. As I told you, Mark has got 661 verses, Matthew 1068 and Luke 149. But because they were synoptic, they had to have some common verses between them. So how many are common? 782 verses are common between Matthew and Luke. And among them, 582 verses are common in Mark also. So that means they copied 582 verses from Mark. But the number of common verses are actually more than what Mark has written. So there must have been some more common verses that came from somewhere else. 200 out of those 782, 582 were for Mark's. But 200 came from somewhere else, from some other source, which is a common source. Where did it come from? We don't know. Yeah? We don't know. But incredibly, all these 200 verses that are common were about the sayings of Jesus. Yeah? They are about the sayings of Jesus. Yeah? So, unlike those 582 verses which told us what Jesus did, these 200 common verses tell us what Jesus said. That is the sayings of Jesus. These 200 verses are drawing from a common source book of the sayings of Jesus. This source has never been found. But we know that it existed from the writings of Matthew and Luke. those common verses. Scholars call it Q or Quell. You know, Quell in German means, Quell is the German word for source. Yeah? So now you know that the history, now you know about the four source theory. First source is Mark. The second source was Quell, the unknown source, or the common verses that don't occur in Mark. Third is Matthew's own knowledge about Jesus. And fourth is Luke's own knowledge about Jesus. So this is the four source theory of the New Testament, of the Gospels. Now, I want to tell you, Matthew actually, if it was the second Gospel to be written, right? First was Mark. But yet, the founding fathers put Matthew as the first Gospel. Why? You know why? There was a reason. Matthew comes first in the New Testament because Matthew's Gospel forms a logical bridge between the Old Testament and the New Testament, because Matthew was writing for the Jews. That logical bridge between the Old and the New Testaments was because he was trying to form a bridge between the Jewish believers and the non-Jewish, that is the Gentile believers. Yeah, I hope you get that now. Now, who was Matthew? Matthew was also known as Levi or Levi. If you read in the book of Mark 2:14 and Luke chapter 5 verses 27 and 29, you'll know who Matthew is, Levi or Levi or Levi. He was also a tax collector. Now you know people who are tax collectors or from customs and all in those days, because he was a tax collector in Galilee. That is, it was under Herod Antipas. And they used to let these goods pass from the territory. And because Galilee was like a gateway, from the west to the east and the east to the west, all these tax collectors would make a lot of money. So Matthew's reputation was pretty bad, must have been bad. Whether he was corrupt or not is not known, but it is a generic understanding that all those who are tax collectors, all those who were tax collectors during those times were corrupt. So he was looked down upon in the society. All the Jews hated him because he was finally collecting taxes for the Romans. But I want to tell you something. See, all of Jesus' disciples were fishermen, unlearned. They could not write. But Matthew could write. Matthew, when Jesus called him, Matthew left everything behind except the pen with which he wrote. No wonder he wrote this wonderful gospel. It is a teaching gospel. He would be the first to compile a book on Jesus' teaching. Then there is also a lot of controversy about who wrote the Gospel of Matthew. The Gospel of Matthew, because it is named Matthew, naturally we assume that it was written by Matthew. It is written by Matthew. But many people say, if Matthew was an apostle, why did he have to copy from Mark, who was not an apostle? Simple. Matthew uses Mark only as a framework and sequence, because they were about events. And based on that, he was fitting in all the teachings. And also remember, Mark was being Peter's interpreter, having been with Peter. Matthew would not have any problems or qualms about referring to Mark. No issues of ego or whatever. Yeah. So the Gospel of Matthew is written by Matthew. But for whom was Matthew written? For the Jews, to prove that all prophecies of the Old Testament are fulfilled in Jesus. Therefore, Jesus is the Messiah, whom they have been waiting, and they are still waiting. The Jews are still waiting for him. Also, he says this was to fulfill what the Lord has spoken. It occurs 16 times. So many times and something happens and Jesus even says something. This was to fulfill what the Lord has spoken in the Old Testament. And everything that Jesus did in the gospel was to fulfill the promises of the Old Testament. When Jesus answers the Syro-Phoenician woman, he says, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. That he says in Mark chapter 15 verse 24. We have already addressed this issue earlier. And Matthew is the only gospel that mentions the church. Yeah, the word church. During Peter's confession, that Jesus is the Son of the living God, when Jesus asked them, who do you think I am? See how the three Gospels are different. See, Matthew in chapter 16, verse 18a, the first part of verse 18, he says, "And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." But Mark in chapter 8, verses 27 to 33, and Luke in chapter 9, verses 18 to 24, do not mention about church. Yeah? Which means that during Matthew's time, the church had already been solidly formed and he's using it. Luke somehow doesn't use it because maybe he didn't think of using it. And Matthew is very faithful to the law. Matthew has special interest in the last days, the apocalyptic, Qayamat, as the Muslims will say. And his chapter 24 of Matthew's Gospel is only next to Revelation in the apocalyptic language. Also remember the parable of the wise and foolish virgins? You don't know when death is going to come. That only occurs in Matthew. And the parable of the sheep and the goats, where the sheep will be separated from the goats after the last day. It comes in chapter 25, verses 31 to 46. But Matthew is very, very faithful to the law. This is something I have to mention. He's very faithful to the law because he's addressing to the Jews. The Jews were very faithful to the law. And Matthew has apart from the special interest in the apocalypse, which the Jews believed, Matthew says about the law, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets, for I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished." But let us look at Matthew's greatest characteristic. It is his teaching, because this is the teaching gospel. The Sermon on the Mount occurs in Matthew, is considered the greatest discourse ever by popular consensus. Even Mahatma Gandhi was inspired. And Matthew is systematic. He gathers Jesus' teachings into 5 blocks. Maybe it is the 5 blocks is to mirror the 5 books of the Torah or the Old Testament, the Pentateuch. And the teachings are mostly about Jesus' kingdom. The 5 blocks I'll enumerate, I'll tell them to you. First is the Sermon on the Mount, that teaching from chapter 5 to 7. Then the duties of the leaders of the kingdom, the second part, the second block that he inserts. The third is the parables of the kingdom. The fourth is the greatness and forgiveness in the kingdom. And last is the coming of the king in the last days. We must remember that there were no books in those days, remember. Because then we will understand why Matthew is writing like this. There were no books in those days. Everyone had to memorize the books. So Matthew arranged everything in 3s and 7s and even 14s. See the 3 messages from the angel to Joseph, the 3 denials of Peter, the 3 questions of Pilate to Jesus. And the 7 parables of the kingdom, which he tells in chapter 13. The 7 woes to the Pharisees, that is chapter 23. And the number of generations in the genealogy, all 14. You know why? Because he wanted to prove that Jesus was the son of David. Now in Hebrew and Aramaic, they never wrote the vowels. They only took the consonants. That is D, W, D added to 14. So he places 14 generations in each, from Abraham to David, from David to the fall, the Exodus, and from the Exodus to the time of Jesus. Even though he errs, because there are only 13 generations from the time of the Exodus to the time of Jesus. And Matthew's dominating idea in the gospel is that of Jesus as king. So that is the reason he mentions the genealogy, to prove that Jesus is the son of David, a king. And the term son of David is the term most used in the Gospel of Matthew. Then he tells us about the 3 wise men who come looking for a king. Then the triumphal entry into Jerusalem of Jesus as a king. And the title on the cross, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And in the Sermon on the Mount, 5 times Jesus abrogates the law by saying, "It has been said so and so, but I say unto you." He says it 5 times. And then finally in Matthew, the last chapter, 28, verse 18, he says, "All authority has been given unto me." But I want to tell you something. I also told you Matthew was the second gospel written. That means Luke was the third. How do we know that? The genealogy. You know, he's addressing the Jews. No? That's why he starts his genealogy from Abraham, who's considered the father of the Jews. Luke included the genealogy because Matthew had included it, maybe. And Matthew, of course, wrote the genealogy because among the Jewish customs, it was like the Aadhaar card, before you presented a history of anybody, you had to tell about his genealogy, where he came from. So Matthew wrote that. So Luke is including his genealogy, and Luke starts out not from Abraham. He starts even before that, from the time of Adam, because Adam is the father of not only Jews but all the Gentiles and non-Jews. Yeah. There's one more thing very interesting. After the resurrection, there is no mention of Matthew at all in the whole Bible, in the New Testament, after resurrection. And I want to tell you what my favorite commentator, William Barclay, says. He says, every teacher owes a debt of gratitude to Matthew for his teaching gospel. Matthew's projection of Jesus is a man born to be king. Jesus walks through the pages of the Gospel of Matthew as if in purple and gold royalty. Beautiful. So what have we learned today? We looked at the Gospel of Matthew, and we also answered the following questions as to why the early church fathers chose 4 Gospels, and why there are 3 synoptics, similar Gospels. We told you why. How do we know that the 3 synoptics are similar, and also how they are different? And we also proved to you which of the 3 was written first. We also told you who wrote the Gospel of Matthew and who was Matthew. We also told you how Matthew's Gospel differs from Mark's and how his Gospel differs from Luke. And we also looked at the main characteristics of Matthew's Gospels. So from next Wednesday 7 p.m. we will embark on the magical journey into Palestine with Matthew, and we will see firsthand how Jesus was born, he grew, he preached, he healed and redeemed mankind. We shall start with chapter 1. Many consider it very boring because of the genealogy, but if you think so, you will be surprised next Wednesday. Don't miss it. I've been asked by many, why only 1 chapter a week? I say we are going to study it in great detail and you will enjoy it. Of course, for that we'll need time. Thank you. Praise God.